Hi, this is Andrew. Thanks for joining me. This video covers the details of group policies in Active Directory, or just the high-level overview of group policy for Active Directory. This is episode 4 in the series, the Active Directory series. It follows up the previous episodes on groups and users and things like that. So now we're going to get into group policies, which is really frequently a security function for Active Directory. So first thing I want to do, this is where I left off in the last video, where I was logged in as Gracie on my Windows 10 system. Now, since it's remote desktop, I can do Control-Alt-N to bring up the screen where I'll change my password. If it were on a full computer in front of me, I would do Control-Alt-Delete. But this Control-Alt-N will get me this screen here. I can do change password. Now, I'm going to type in my old password properly. And now I'm going to type in a new password. I'm going to type in a bad password. I know I've said that we always want to use the same password in this test environment, but this is just to show what we can do here or why things happen. I just did 1234 as a password. Now I do this, and let's see, 1234. I'm going to do the apply the change. Unable to update the password. The value provided for the new password does not meet the length, complexity, or history requirements of the domain. It doesn't tell you which one. It doesn't say you need to do this and you need to add a character or anything like that. But it does say that it doesn't meet the requirements. So let's go take a look at why. I will come back here. Now I'm going to first go into group policy management. So group policies cover a lot of things we can do with Active Directory to control computers and users in the environment. Now, this is the domain, and I have a default domain policy. We're going to look at that in a minute, but just take a look at what's here. We have domain controllers as a container. We have sales as a container that we created a while ago. And if I wanted other containers or other things, I could do that. But for now, we have a domain, and the domain itself has a policy. That is different from the default domain controllers policy. Just be aware of that. Default domain policy applies to everything on the domain, users and computers. And I'm going, now if you look real close, you see there's an arrow there. That's saying that's a shortcut. That's where this is applied. If we look at all of our group policies, a list of all of our group policies, that would be one of them. And this is group policy. Now it says here you have selected a link to a group policy. Except for changes to link properties, changes you make here are global for the group policy object. This would be really important if I made a change to a group policy that was applied in multiple places, and I thought, I'm going to make this desktop wallpaper policy for sales. But if that same desktop wallpaper policy were also applied to another group, that change would happen. So if I look at what this actually does, I'm going to close. This is a list of all of the effective settings in the policy. If we go down, really what we're looking at is 24 passwords remembered, maximum password age is 42 days, minimum password age is 1 day. And these can come into play, especially when you're in a test environment. Minimum password length 7 characters, enable complexity requirements. So I tried a 4-character password and it didn't work. And that was because complexity requirements means it must have 3 of the 4 things: uppercase, lowercase, numeral, and special character. So if it has 3 of those 4, that's complexity. It also didn't meet the minimum password length of 7 characters. It actually also didn't meet the minimum password age of 1 day. So when you create an account within it, you can't change the password for a day unless you require the password to be changed. So this would also cause problems. Now we're looking at a test environment where I want to be able to change passwords. So let's go in and change some of these settings. I can right click on this, and when I select edit, I move from group policy management. It's going to launch group policy management editor. And this is editing that specific policy. default domain policy right there. That is the one policy I'm editing. If I want to look at where the policy is, I can go back to my settings, and it's Windows settings, security settings, account policies, and password. So if I go, actually let's step that up a little bit so you can see. Computer configuration, policies, Windows settings. So computer configuration, policies, Windows settings. And we were in security settings. And let's go back to confirm. Security settings, account policies, password. And that is the one right here. So now under this, we have password policy. Password policy, that's all of these settings we had there. So first thing I'm going to do, password age. I said this doesn't work. I'm going to set it to 0. Now the reason this exists is because Microsoft is afraid that you might be afraid that a user might have a password that expires. They want to keep using that password. It remembers 24 passwords. So they go through and do 24 password changes immediately. And then they reset the password again and they're back to their original password. They don't want 25 passwords in a day to keep the same password. So they set it so you can't change your password more than once a day. The maximum password age is when it notifies you need to change your password. If you remember back in the settings, you can override that by going to account, password never expires. And in the test environment, this is why you might set that. So you don't have to deal with that 42 day. Commonly, this is 90 days, depends on the environment. Minimum password length. 8 is generally accepted as the absolute minimum. That's not ideal, but we're going to actually set this one to 4. We're going to see if we can set a 4-character password. Now, in order to do my 1234 password, I also need to turn off password must meet complexity requirements. Now, if you don't know what this does, you can explain. You click on the Explain tab, and it says, if this policy is enabled, passwords must meet the following minimum requirements. Not contain the user's account name or parts of the user's full name that exceed 2 consecutive characters. That's a good one to be aware of. Be at least 6 characters in length. Contain characters from 3 of the following 4 categories. English uppercase, English lowercase, base 10 numbers, 0 through 9. Non-alphabetic characters, those are symbols. Complexity requirements are enforced when passwords are changed or created. So they are not actually enforced if you have a bad password and then you turn this policy on, it won't change. It won't say, hey, your password is 1234, we need to fix that. So by default, it's enabled, and we just, I did not disable it. Now I disabled it. So the first parts of this actually come into play sometimes when you are helping a user set a password. And I've been there where they say, it's giving me this error. And you have to go through and look at why are they getting the error. And frequently it's without knowing what their password is, because I don't want to know what a user's password is or what they're trying to set. So I'll say, does it have a part of your name? Does it have, is it anything you've used in the past 24 password changes? I don't say that. I say, is it anything you've ever used before? Does it have a number, a special character, upper and lowercase? So sometimes you can talk people through, or frequently you'll talk people through, but sometimes you have to say, try going in this direction with your password instead. So now I've set those, or I've changed those, and they are changed now, but they're not changed here yet. I need to update the settings that exist on my domain controller here. I could log out and log back in. The other thing it can do is GP update. That's group policy update. That will force whatever changes, that will force the computer to go out and find the latest group policies that are set. If I had set something more interesting or something more visible, you would see a pop up right now. So I just did that. Now, let's try change password. old password, if I can type it properly. My new password. And I will try it. And my password was changed. My new password is 1234. Now, I did not change, and I refreshed this, so I did not change my enforced password history. It's still going to remember 24 passwords. So now I'm kind of in a bind with my test environment, because now I have I can use my bad password, but I can't use my normal password. It's going to say unable to update the password, the length, complexity. In this case, it's history requirements. So it gives the same exact error message because I tried to use the same password I've used before. This is a common problem when you're in the test environment, so just be aware of it, and the ways you can deal with this. In my case, I could change enforced password history. I could disable that. Or I could delete the Gracie account and just recreate it or not use Gracie anymore. So that is the default domain policy. That's great, but what if I wanted to do a different policy? What if I wanted to say the sales group gets a different policy? I can create, if I had an existing policy, I could link it right here, or I could create a policy here. And I'm going to call this one no control panel. So I can go here. This is a linked group policy. Now if I want to edit this, now I can go in and say, what do I want to do here? I'm going to see if I can find the setting. There are lots of settings available within these group policies. The problem is sometimes finding them or understanding what they do. But if you go in and poke around enough, you can sometimes find it, or if you do a little bit of research, you can find it. So I have control panel, but I could also do system. Well, I believe it might be a user. It's a user policy, control panel, and there it is. Prohibit access to control panel and PC settings. So I'm going to enable this, and this will give you information about it. Well, before I go there, you'll see the information here, but if you double click on it, disables all control panel programs and PC settings app. It blocks that. It applies, it removes control panel from here. The setting removes PC settings from here. And it even tells you it has to be at least Windows 2000. Certain settings will only work. Certain settings will be Windows 2000, 2003, or you'll get into really kind of specific environments, or it must be at least Windows 10. So I'm going to do enabled. And now that is, if I go back here, I can look at sales and I can see no control panel policy. Okay, the settings on that are prohibit access to control panel and PC settings. Now if you look, I didn't link it at the domain. So an account, if we go back to users and computers, an account like George or Gracie would not see this policy because they're logged into the computer, but they're not in the sales group itself. It will take the Fred account to see this issue. So just to take a look, control panel as Gracie, I can see it, and if I do GP update, now there's also settings there. I can see that as well. This is the newer version. So now just to confirm, I can still see control panel or settings. Now I'm going to log out and log back in as Fred and see what happens. Okay, I'm logged in as Fred, and if I type who am I, you see it is test Fred in the test domain. Now, one item of note, this is the sales organizational unit. That is different from the sales group that I created here. Poor naming, just not that creative. Sales is easy to type. I use it too much. I could name this group anything. This could be sales, or it could be if this is going to be, if the other one is, say, quality assurance, this one is going to be quality control. I'll call it QC. Now that group name has changed. It is not in any way related to this sales OU where I applied the policy. So once again, policy is applied on the sales OU. And I just logged in as Fred. So now I'm going to try accessing control panel. So if I type control panel, I click on it here to open it. This operation has been canceled due to restrictions in effect on this computer. Please contact your system administrator. That blocks control panel. Let's go to settings. And it just closes. It doesn't even give me the error message. Now, whether you should do these things, that's your decision or your organization's decision. But just the thing to recognize is there are a lot of things you can do from a group policy perspective. And it can be wallpaper, and it can be just any number of things. And now if you want to edit that setting, let's say you wanted to do one other setting in here. You could go in and say desktop. Common one is the wallpaper, which I believe is in here somewhere. It's not always a great practice to enforce things that don't need to be enforced, but they can be done. So one more item related to group policies. If you remember back to sales here, this container, it has a no control panel policy. A lot of room on this page, and I could actually have other policies, and in some cases they can even contradict. So I could have a domain policy that says allow the control panel and another one that says block, or vice versa. There's a lot of complexity about which thing happens. And it depends on whether it's enforced. It depends on where in the chain it happens. You can also use groups to block access to certain policies. That's really getting into a kind of a stranger situation that I would generally avoid. Really, when you're looking at a lot of things, if you're making it complex for no reason other than to make it complex, you're more likely to make mistakes, so that can be dangerous. But that is the basics of group policies. Really, the hardest part when you're dealing with group policies is finding the policy. Frequently, it's an internet search to say, how do I do this thing? How do I set the wallpaper? Sometimes it's in computer configuration. Sometimes it's in user configuration. And there are Windows settings you can do. You can redirect folders. A lot is available. Which one you want to use will depend on your environment, again, how you want your environment to work. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.